Hey guys, and welcome back. I have a little, not a review, but a comparison, and it is over one of my favorite locomotives from my favorite railroad, the ATSF SD40-2. And one I would like to say I really like, and the other I would like to say is uh, I hate to say that it's almost complete trash, but as far as the detail goes, it's just not there. Um, the attention to detail is not there. I won't say that the detail is not there, but the attention to it is not. Um, so today on the right we have 5038, which happens to be our Broadway Limited Paragon 2 latest release of the SD40-2. Now mine happens to be refurbished, but that does not change the detail parts at all. On the left, 5054, produced by Athearn Ready to Roll. Being that the Athearn Ready to Roll is almost $130 cheaper, if not more, by MSRP. The Athearn is there, and the Broadway Limited is not. I hate to say that about the company of Broadway Limited, because when it comes to their steam locomotives, they make excellent models. But the SD40-2, they kind of let everything go. They just threw it to the side and really pulled something that is something a cheaper company like Bachmann would do. I've actually seen Bachmann put more into their locomotives than Broadway Limited has here. Now, first thing I'm going to go over, the Athearn happens to be a model of the before 1976, I would say from 72 to 75. Where the Broadway Limited happened is after 1976, that is indicated by the flag. Now, Broadway Limited tried to do a different model than Athearn, which is correct. After 1976, they had a little bit different styling, and a few parts were changed, but Broadway Limited just missed it. The very first thing I'm going to go over is the most obvious. The Athearn has a cab-mounted headlight and a roof-mounted, on the corner of the cab, rotary beacon, which is correct. It's exactly what it's supposed to have to be a pre-1976 locomotive, to be that styling. Now, I cannot tell you exactly when Santa Fe changed their locomotives, and I'm not saying that every single SD40-2 has a roof-mounted beacon because it has cab-mounted headlights. But for at least these two numbers, and for the majority of Santa Fe locomotives, even if we're not looking at number specific, if it has cab-mounted headlights, it's most likely going to have a roof-mounted beacon on the corner of the cab, or it won't have a beacon at all. Next, to the Broadway Limited. We have ditch lights, which is not a problem. Ditch lights are something the SD40-2 had, but this has cab-mounted headlights. And like I said with the Athearn, if it has cab-mounted headlights, it should have a beacon, or it shouldn't have anything at all. That anything at all includes ditch lights. And for every Santa Fe locomotive, if it has ditch lights, it has a nose headlight. Now every SD40-2. So that's just that is the most obvious problem, and it is the one thing I despise of the Broadway Limited. I love ditch lights. I love blowing the horn and watching ditch lights flash. I think that's just the coolest thing ever. It amazes me. But not if it's going to be that incorrect. Next thing, the front pilot in general. We'll go ahead and do the easy stuff first. You can tell the Athearn has a snowplow that sits at an angle about like this. It's a low-profile plow, and it comes up to the top, and it makes a serious curve, and will actually hold my screwdriver. And then I have to, pull it out to make it let go. has open MU doors with the MU cable sticking through, and they're nicely silver painted tipped and has a brake line. The Broadway Limited has a bigger snowplow. It is not arched at all. It has MU doors, but the MU cables just sit behind it, and they're not silver tipped, of course. That snowplow is not really correct. It's correct for other Santa Fe locomotives, but not exactly for the 40-2. These white coupler lift bars, I cannot say I've ever seen those on any SD40-2 in photographs of the real thing. Now this has a flat anti-climber, which is incorrect for the model they were trying to produce. It is supposed to have the angular, longer anti-climber, and I will pick up the camera to show you this. It is supposed to have the longer sticking out one. Now while we're up here, I want you to look at the sand filler hatches on the noses. If I take my screwdriver, I can touch this. This is a separately applied detail part. My screwdriver hits it and I'm pushing the locomotive. Where on the Broadway Limited, yeah, it happens, but really, I can slide it over if I want to. And also while we're up here, I just want to take a look at the grab irons. Grab irons are a lot thicker, and I think that's because of the paint, but they definitely applied the paint a little thick on their grab irons for sure, where Athearn did a very good job. And also got the color correct. It is supposed to be blue on this side of the cab and blue down here on the step, so that it doesn't blend in with the locomotive as much, where Broadway Limited just left them yellow. Of course, the Broadway Limited does have windshield wipers, where the Athearn does not, but that's just Athearn being a budget model, where Broadway Limited was putting in a little bit of their stuff that makes it a more expensive model. But now the Broadway Limited also happens to have walkway tread, where the Athearn does not. But again, that's just one of the budget model things. That's not really because Athearn's. That's just Athearn cheaping out to make the model a little cheaper, buyable, where Athearn would do on the Genesis line. But Broadway Limited are supposed to be professional grade models. They're supposed to be like the Genesis or Kato or Atlas Masters or Intermountain or Intermountain. They're supposed to be the full-on detail, where the Ready to Roll is supposed to be a little more budget-friendly line. And the sad thing is that the budget-friendly, quote-unquote, model is still better looking than the Pro or Master Series locomotive. Next, I just want to talk about the paint color a little bit. I'm going to turn these sideways so we can take a little bit better look at them. Maybe if it'll sit still. There we go, that's a little better. The Broadway Limited, I think, got the yellow a little more correct. It's a little bit brighter. Now, on camera, the Athearn looks perfect, but in real life, it looks a little burnt. It looks like it's been out in the sun for a little while. Which, we all know that locomotives have to stay out in the sun most of their life. So, that being said, the Athearn is actually a little more realistic, being the model looks like it's been out in the sun for a little while. Or the Broadway Limited, yes, it looks like it's a brand new factory locomotive, which was the goal. It's too glossy. The clear coat they used is just too much, and it's too shiny. Where the Athearn is a more matte finish that looks really nice. Another thing we'll notice from this view is that we'll actually go to the side view a little bit more here. We do not have the brake piping on this, where we do have the brake piping here. But again, that's just Athearn being a more budget-friendly model. We're not getting in completely in-depth. Now, if we also notice to the side here on the Athearn, we have painted fuel tank details, where on the Broadway Limited, it just happens to be plain black nothingness. But we do have the same piping detail. Next, the Athearn also will display that this is the front of the locomotive. It belongs to the Barstow shops, or that's its home shops, would be the Barstow shops. And it actually says here, it says a number that I can't read because it's so small. Then it says gear ratio, where the Broadway Limited slacked off and just barely was able to put the F for front, but put it in the wrong spot. It's supposed to be on the other side of this handrail. I'll zoom in so you can see the little bit of it. Yeah, there's nothing there. Next, like I said, the Broadway Limited added the flag where Athearn didn't, but that's because they're from two different time periods, so that's correct. Oh, another thing I actually just now noticed. This round disc on the side of the cab here is way too big, where the one on the Athearn, it's actually hiding behind the handrail there, but the Athearn did a way better job. That's about the size it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be just above the handrail, or the grab iron, where that's located. And if you also look on the decals, you can see a pretty good, nice yellow stripe in between the blue stripes there. Where on the Broadway Limited, on camera, it almost looks like a solid blue line because it's so close and there's just no yellow there. Next problem that you probably can't see on camera, the whole model for Broadway Limited, the whole thing, looks like the paint has been put on 3 times. Looks like it's just really thick. So that's just another problem I have personally. Next thing, we have this piece of plastic that's supposed to represent the, I think that's supposed to represent the mirror. Don't hold me to that. I'm not exactly sure what that piece of plastic is supposed to represent here, but it does move. I can actually turn it out, which I think is just really cool. Where on the Broadway Limited, it's barely a mold on the side of the model. And I'll even get into that. That is barely molded onto the side of the model. Yeah, my camera lens broke the other day, and it is having a really hard time focusing. But it is barely molded onto the side of the model, where the Athearn one, you can tell even with my camera that doesn't want to focus correctly, you can see that it is there. You can see that it is there pretty clearly. Next thing, if you look on the Athearn right here, you can see those door handles. They're nice and deep, they're dark colored, you can see them. Where on the Broadway Limited, sorry, that's not balancing very well. The Broadway Limited, you can't. It's just flat across. And the reason why is I can't even see them in person. I mean, they're there if you look at it under a microscope, but very, very hard to tell. Next, I just want to say that the Broadway Limited, the sunshades seem to be molded to the cab. They're not a separate applied detail part, it doesn't look like. Or the Athearn, it's pretty obvious to tell that it's a separately applied detail part. Not only that, but it's metal. You can bend it to be, very carefully, you can bend it to the position that looks a little more correct. You can bend it to a position that looks a little more correct. Unfortunately, I do not really have enough space to show you both models at one time as far as the sides, but from the naked eye perspective, the Santa Fe logo is too large on the Broadway Limited. It seems to be too long, and it's a little better to see on the other side. We can also see that the Athearn seems to have these safety labels here, where the Broadway Limited does not have any. The Broadway Limited does not have any safety labels at all. Next, we're also going to show that the EMD label here is black and white, which is correct, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not looking for perfection, but the Athearn one actually is GM blue and black, which is perfect. Next thing, I'm going to have to do the models one at a time so you can see this, but this is a pretty obvious. Notice the radiator grills here, it has lines that go up and down and lines that go back and forth, where the Athearn only has lines that go up and down. Now, I have not seen a locomotive that has the crossed wire grills, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Now, while we're here, I'm also going to say this does have grab irons, which, from my personal experience, that's not a very hard thing to add, so I think Athearn should add their grab irons. But that's about the only fault I've found with the Athearn that I dislike, as far as the detail. Back to the Athearn for a second. Just want to show you that, yes, these are up and down. I'm not lying about that. It has no cross sections. And it actually makes a box, which I know is correct, where the other one is wrong. It just is kind of grills that stick out, and there's no actual casing around it. And they stick out too far. Onto the back of the locomotive. Again, we just have these grab irons that are really thick, and they're actually pressed up against the cab, and it looks like they're molded on. I can tell they're not because I can slide the screwdriver behind them, but they're just not right. Again, a little more detail. We have these black circles up top that are highlighted, where the Broadway Limited, you can tell it has them, but they're just molded on. They're not highlighted like they're supposed to be. The Athearn, the headlight is mounted a little, the rear headlight's mounted a little high. The Broadway Limited, it's mounted a little low. And that's about it for the back. Again, we have the silver painted light markers here, and the yellow painted ones there. That's not a big deal. And actually, I will say the number boards do look better on the Broadway Limited, where it's just because they did what the real thing does. They're just yellow caps inside the number board spot, where the Athearn just kind of did some molded on. But again, that's the one thing that Broadway Limited did good. And then the big obvious problem on the back, Santa Fe never had rear snowplows. There was no point. Santa Fe did not go in snow very often. Not only that, but they didn't go in snow reverse often either. So, just kind of another ridiculous thing. Now, I will say two of my MU cables broke off over here. I'm not sure exactly why. I think they were just... Sorry about that. I dropped my camera. What I was saying. They just seem to hang a little low. And I think they probably caught one of my switches on my layout. Not a big deal. Again, we also have a nice thin piece of metal that makes our coupler lift bars, where the Broadway Limited is this really thick white piece. I mean, you can tell it's thicker than the Athearn because you can see it, where you can't see the one on the Athearn as well. Off to the side, we'll say that the Broadway Limited has a ratchet style brake, and the Athearn has a wheel style brake. Both are correct for their respective years. Next, we're going to go on top of the models real quick. So let me set them up, and we can go to the roof. Again, Athearn just has those really, really nice fans. I've always liked the fans that Athearn has. You notice the Athearn model has a smaller exhaust. It's not as wide. The Athearn is, of course, again, more correct. Also, if you look to the rear of the model, we have a yellow painted grab iron, where the other one is just blue. As far as I know, the yellow is correct. We also have that stand filler hatch that stands up all the way, and is fully painted yellow, where the yellow comes all the way back, and the Broadway Limited, they got their fans a little too closed, so they left it. So, they did not paint it correctly. Also on the Athearn, we have this little antenna rail detail, so that's good. And of course, the Broadway Limited has better handrails, but because of the different anti-climber, they're not shaped correctly. So that's about all I have to say about the two. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of rate them, and then do a little bit of general talking about the models. The Athearn, I have to give it, just being that it's supposed to be a cheaper model, saying, you know, giving it the little bit of a bonus, because it's not supposed to be a perfect model. It's, you know, it's a more economy, a more it's a less expensive model. And in that respect, I think it deserves a good 8, 8.5 on a 1 to 10 scale. Where the Broadway Limited is just a big disappointment, and I would have to give it a 3 or 4. So, I mean, honestly, I hate to do that, but the thing is, if you go to Broadway Limited's website, and you can do this right now, once I'm done talking here, go to their website, click on Diesel, HO Diesel, click on the SD40, or click on Paragon 2, and click on the SD40-2 Diesel. I would do this on camera just to show you. Now look at the Santa Fe. Now look at the Milwaukee. Now look at the Canadian National. Now, you know, pick one. They made a bunch. I think they had a BNSF in there. They all look identical as far as detail. If you strip them down, they are the same model under that paint. So, what that tells me is they pulled a Bachman. I mean, I hate to, you know, say that, but, you know, they made one model, did not change one thing, and put different paint schemes on them to sell more. It's a very cheap trick. Or, you know, it's not even really a trick, but it's just disappointing. If you're going to call yourself a high quality, and I'm going to read their box here, right here. The Pioneers and, okay. We're not going to say that. We're not going to say that one. Okay. They don't claim to be one of the best on their box. But, you know, not like some of the other companies that say, I'm trying to think of some of the other Cato, let me just grab up some of my other boxes so I can read them. Athearn, ready to roll, the future of model railroading. Cato says, for the professional model railroader, I believe. That says that on the box. Built to meet demands of the serious model railroader is what Cato says. Fox Valley doesn't claim anything. And I don't think the Athearn Genesis box claims anything like that either. But, you know, they're a company that likes to say they do very good. And I'm not saying they don't do very good. I'm just saying that they really lost it on this locomotive. It was not as good as it should have been. And it is not the high quality that it should be. And I'm a little disappointed because they're coming out with their GP20s, which is a new model for them. They're also coming out with their SD40-5s. Both are supposed to have Santa Fe paint schemes, and both are models I would love to get. But if they're going to look like this SD40-2, it's a waste of your money. If they're gonna be a generic GP20 with no road specific details, it's a waste of money. I will go find a used Proto 2000 or a new Walthers Proto one. I think Walthers redid them at some point. If not, I'm sure they have plans to do it because Walthers has been doing all of the Proto 2000 stuff. And the SD45, go buy an older Athearn one, or Athearn I think is bringing out some newer ones soon. Just wait for the Athearn one, because the Broadway Limited one, if they do what they did with the SD40-2, it's a waste of your money. I guess that's it for my little rant. I mean, I just want to say that the Broadway Limited SD40-2, depending on what road name you get, is a waste of money. One of the road names they made is perfect. It looks just like the real thing. One of them. And then all the other ones look exactly like it, so they're not road specific. I think Milwaukee Road is the one that they have that is almost perfect. Don't hold me to that. But I'm pretty sure this is a Milwaukee Road inspired locomotive where the Athearn is a perfect, not perfect, but is a very, very, very good representation of the Athearn SD40-2. I would say if you want a perfect one, the Intermountain SD40-2. The only reason I didn't put it in this review is that it's a different road name, so it's not going to have the same details. The Intermountain is a very, very well done model. But with the recent announcement that we heard a few days ago, I think Scale Trains is about to blow both Intermountain and Athearn with, well, Athearn blew Broadway Limited pretty good, but I think Scale Trains is about to blow everyone out of the water with theirs. And the Bowser one, the new Bowser one looks very good, and I think Bowser is really hurting themselves because they have all the tooling and just don't want to do any American paint schemes, really, and don't want to do any American paint schemes. I don't know why. They have all the tooling right there. You might as well just paint up some other ones, even if you're going to do what Broadway Limited did. You might as well paint up some and make your money, right? So, that's the end of my little rant. Just saying, the Broadway Limited is not a terrible model. I will say, it does run better than a stock Athearn. My Athearn right here runs probably just as good as the Broadway Limited does now. And it's a pretty good sound, too. But, realistically, if you want a perfect SD40-2, buy the Intermountain. If you want a good deal, buy the Intermountain as well. The Intermountain's cheaper than the Athearn. So really, the Intermountain is probably the best SD40-2 on the market as of right now, and they've made more paint schemes than anyone else so far. So, and they still have more on the books too. I've been asking them a few times to make the Santa Fe Kodachrome with just the SF and not the SPSF, just the SF scheme. So hopefully that'll come around too. But other than that, just the Broadway Limited one is not worth the money. The Intermountain one you can get for just into the you can get in the high 100s for a sound model. That's $100 cheaper than the Broadway Limited, and it's a 10 times better model. I give the Intermountain a 9, no, all day. Where the Broadway Limited is going to cost more, and it's not as good a model. And if you're looking for an even cheaper one, I'm sure you can find a non-sound Intermountain for really cheap as well. And if you want the Athearn, go ahead and buy the Athearn. It's not a bad model either, but I kind of regret buying it. I should have bought the Intermountain. So, that's the end of this. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm out.